Thorfinn, you filthy little unrefined Viking, kindly stop chewing on the subscribe button for the New World Review. Take it out of your mouth and press it like a normal human being, which will result in regular anime and manga content uploaded straight into your YouTube feed. Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and today it's time for a long overdue video regarding my thoughts on Season 1 of Vinland Saga, which concluded its run an awfully long time ago now, but I'm only just now getting on top of it. And it's a bit of a weird situation actually, because I did my first impression of the series, loved it, and then I kind of forgot it was airing when other things took priority. So on the bright side, I had a very solid amount of episodes to just watch one after the other, and it reminded me why I love this series so much to begin with. Oh, and in case it isn't obvious, this video will contain spoilers for the Vinland Saga anime. I haven't read the manga, so no fears there, or I should say I haven't read the manga yet, because I'm highly tempted to give it a go, given the pretty damn incredible note that the anime left us on. But really, in retrospect, Vinland Saga was such a solid series for a pseudo-history, and I say that because I don't generally go for that kind of genre. If we're doing this sort of thing, I would prefer solid fantasy, or just an incarnation of the world that is far removed from our own. But really, I might have to revisit that whole idea, because just as how Haikyuu got me excited to explore some more sports-related series, Vinland Saga has shown me that yes, I have probably been sleeping on pseudo-historicals. And I won't repeat everything I said in the first impressions video, but to delve properly into this one of the most stunning things about Vinland Saga is simply characters, and they only get stronger and stronger the further I traveled with them. We begin in a fairly simple place with figures like Thor's, who seem almost legendary in retrospect, because every time he was featured in a little flashback in the latter half of the series, it just made me feel like, wow, it's been an awfully long while since we've seen him, and almost like he'd slipped into the realm of mythology, although I don't know how much that is just me having a giant gap between starting and finishing the series. But I think this thought is especially potent since we have yet to meet any other character who is equatable to Thor's in any way. He just had it all: strength, philosophy, love. Whatever it was, this man held it. Well, maybe not a man, but something of a god amongst men, and in this turbulent hellhole, he had it figured out. Whereas it seems like every other character struggles in this world, including prolific figures like Askeladd, who, speaking of, is without a doubt my favorite character in the series thus far, and his death in episode 24, well, that was quite the rough experience for me. Rough and conflicting, I should say, because as much as I liked Askeladd, the reality of his existence was never really lost on me. He could be an exceptionally cruel being, but also oddly selectively kind, but most importantly, at all times, he was charismatic. Plus, he also became much easier to empathize with after his whole past was revealed, which you know is rather predictably tragic, as is the past and it would seem fate of every character in Vinland Saga, but the degree to which Askeladd was humanized for me is kind of insane. I think I was very much on his wavelength and able to identify with him far more than anybody else, and really, Askeladd forms the core emotional structure of this season. And what I mean by that is very simple stuff, like when Askeladd was angry, I was angry. When he felt betrayed, I felt betrayed. And when he sliced off the head of that arse-ugly king, I was both shocked and thrilled. Mostly thrilled because there was a great sense of satisfaction in seeing Askeladd not back down, even if he knew that it was going to bring about heavily unfavorable consequences. But contrast that to someone like Thorfinn, for example. I really like Thorfinn, but he became increasingly more difficult for me to empathize with. There were just so many points where he took the concept of raw fury to a whole new level, and I actually found myself very much siding with Askeladd in these situations, just being like, come on, calm down, kid. It's not really that bad, even though it kind of is. Although, of course, just like Leif, I am very much unable to understand the pain that Thorfinn perpetually exists in. Well, that's not entirely true. I do understand it theoretically, but as a viewer, it gets a bit exhausting at times. Not many times though. I think that Thorfinn has a generous but not excessive amount of focus, essentially being part of a more ensemble cast rather than being the protagonist of the story. At least in this part anyway, because with Askeladd out of the way, Thorfinn could very much retake that mantle, although I guess there's also Canute. And speaking of, wow, Canute was probably one of the greatest surprises that this series had to offer. When he was first introduced, I did have an inkling that he was being set up for some kind of rapid growth as a character, because someone of his, how shall we say, crippling emotional fragility has absolutely no chance of surviving in a world like this. However, what I did not expect at all was for Canute to become even an iota as awesome as he did. So much so that I'm honestly a bit conflicted about that moment of transformation, because it really did seem like a switch got flicked in Canute's mind, and then all of a sudden that set him on the path of becoming a real leader. And I get that he did have that whole epiphany moment of discovering what love is with the priest, but still, to go from what he was to a man who seems to inspire and acquire those around him in effectively no time at all is pretty wild. Wild, but very welcome though, because I was expecting this whole Canute business to be a long slog of a character arc. In my mind, by the end of season 1, I would have guessed that we'd have made our first step of progress, with Canute doing something minor like speaking up or committing some sort of small action of consequence, that his character would then go on to snowball from then. But no, we skipped all of that process, and all of a sudden Canute is a boss, and sure, why not? And while we're in the the Canute region, I said in my first impressions of this series that I wasn't sold very much on the character of Ragnar. I mean, by and large, I do really enjoy the fact that Vinland Saga puts a realistic take on character design, but I initially just found his wide breadth and cone head fairly visually off-putting, as well as his generally prudish and all too honorable attitude. However, I do definitely rescind those thoughts though, because he turned out to be quite an unexpected source of heart, and his death was genuinely painful to watch. One of those characters who I really did not know how much I actually enjoyed until he was gone. And I could talk for hours about characters, even the minor one-offs get some pretty meaty development, but there is just so much more to this series than that, so we do need to move on. And I don't remember what I said about this in my other video, or even if I spoke about it at all, but the animation of Vinland Saga is pretty damn pristine, and very much on full display during any number of great action sequences. Anytime Thorfinn leapt into the fray, I knew we were in for something of a visual feast, and I love the way his clashes against Thorkel were handled in particular. There was some really schmick camera work, with some super swift yet exceptionally hard-hitting combat, which also owes a great deal to marvelous editing, music, and sound design. Everything just comes together and works so well. There is no weak link in any department of Vinland Saga, which is very interesting because I actually don't think it particularly excels in any given area either. If you isolate the animation, the sound, or whatever, they would probably be pretty average out of context. But this just goes to show the kind of product that exceptional competence in all areas can produce. Every department just bands together to become some sort of super being. Like, I would never call Vinland Saga the best animated series, or say that it has the best music, or even say that it has the greatest story or even characters. But it most certainly does possess each of these elements at an above average level, which makes it nothing short of infinitely compelling. Briefly on music though, because I did mention it, my favorite auditory hit to come out of Vinland Saga was the very first opening, which was Mukanjo by Survive Said the Prophet. In fact, I went and downloaded it immediately after hearing it for the first time, which I want to emphasize is incredibly rare for me. I usually take quite a bit of time to warm up to opening music, but I feel like this song wonderfully encapsulates everything that this world has to offer. It has moments of deep beauty, epic energy, and really gritty vocals that make you think that you've truly stepped into this time and feel like part of this world. And so it did a really great job of priming me for the episode to follow. I was a lot less sold on the second opening, which is Dark Crow by Man with a Mission, and it's primarily because I just don't feel like it has the depth of feel that the first opening had. It was much more of a generic Japanese rock piece, which is not to say that it didn't grow on me. By the end of the series, I did love it, especially the section where you get the close-ups of Askeladd, Canute, and Thorfinn, as well as the whole chorus where you see Thorkel's axe swinging. It was pretty good stuff, but it never managed to get me quite as hyped as Mukanjo though. And as for the endings, neither of these are songs that particularly appealed to me, because I tend to go for very high energy music. However, I will say that both of them were very welcome reprieves at the end of an episode, because every part of Vinland Saga felt long and intense. So to reach the end of an episode and be greeted with such blissful and peaceful music served as a pretty effective chaser, as well as a reminder that no matter how bad things get, there is always hope, or something super wanky like that. Basically, it was good music to take a moment to exhale and then move on. And really, I hold pretty high praise for how the content of each episode was handled. Getting to the end of an episode always felt like a monumental experience to me, and I can't tell you the amount of times I reached the halfway point and you get the little Vinland Saga card, and I just thought to myself, oh my god, there's more? Because the first half of these episodes could fill an entire episode's worth of content in any lesser series. So it really did feel like there was a supreme amount of value in watching Vinland Saga, and the episodes felt so very long, but in the best possible way. Even the ones that had a very quiet focus. In fact, especially the ones where things kind of came to a halt and we had the opportunity to really zoom in on something. Askeladd's flashback would be a good example of an episode like this, but also the one where they slaughter a whole village to hole up for the winter. That episode was extremely slow, but then again, that was the appropriate pacing. The content demanded that we really hit the brakes at times, and I can imagine that that might actually annoy some people who just want to keep pumping forward, but I really liked the variance of pace, and I don't think there was ever a time where I felt, oh, this is moving too slowly, or even the opposite with, wait, we are going way too fast. I mean, well, with the exception of Canute's sudden character shift. But as for the end of the series itself, one of the main reasons why I'm considering moving to the manga is simply because of the title of the final episode, which is the end of the prologue, which is one of the most brilliant yet frustrating titles I've ever encountered in all of media, because it gives you this feeling of, wait, this wasn't even the main meat of the story? You mean to tell me that this was all set up for something bigger? Then after my interest is piqued, the reality that there are no more episodes swiftly sets in, and it's just like, ugh. So I guess you could say that Vinland Saga well and truly did its job as an anime adaptation, because it has motivated me to pick up the manga and continue the story. Although the one thing I will say I didn't really get is the montage at the end of episode 24, which I'm assuming is a hint of things to come, like a brief little highlight of characters from future arcs or whatever, and just to give the manga fans a little something to watch and go, oh hey, I know that guy, as well as to tease anime watchers like me with a who are you style feeling. Whatever the case, it worked. Everything about Vinland Saga worked. It is an undeniable triumph of 2019 and a series that I am incredibly glad that I took the time to watch. Eventually, that is. But that pretty much does it for my final thoughts on season 1 of Vinland Saga. But what do you guys think? Please do leave your thoughts in the comments below or even join my Discord server. And if you'd like to see more Vinland Saga videos or any other anime manga content, then please do subscribe to the channel, which effectively acts as a kick in the butt, letting me know your desires. But for now, this has been the New World Review, and I'll see you next time.